Well, welcome to the last part of the symposium. We're very pleased today to have Professor Julie Earp of North Carolina State University here to talk to us. Julie is an associate professor in the College of Management at NCSU. And I've known Julie for about 5 years now. We met at a conference and then proceeded to try to break into the Washington Monument, as I recall, was the expedition. It was unsuccessful. They managed to repel the invasion. But nonetheless, we had a very pleasant walk and conversation. And then, as I recall, did some damage to several pitchers of beer. And along the way, discovered that we had a number of interests in the area of privacy, of designing systems for user needs. And during that time, we've had continuing collaboration now and then, working together currently on a couple projects that several of us as a group are all involved with, through the Privacy Place, where she is one of the principals at North Carolina State University. And her research has focused on a number of issues having to do with really validating what users want, what needs to be in systems, user attitudes towards privacy, security, and similar issues. She's involved in the Privacy Place. She's involved in teaching, the e-commerce studio, a number of activities, and is also the sole proprietress of Julie's House of Hacks, which she'll have to explain to you if she chooses. With that as an introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Julie Earp.
Sorry. All right. Thank you. And thanks to all of y'all for coming to the last session of the symposium. And I must say that I've enjoyed meeting those of y'all that I've had a chance to meet and talking with those of y'all I've had a chance to talk with. And this is a follow-up somewhat to the panel that we had this morning on forging trust. I did talk a little bit about some ideas that are a prelude to this. But what I'm going to talk about today is privacy policies in web-based healthcare. So first, let me give you a quick outline. I'm going to talk a little bit about the current state of privacy and how it relates to trust, and specifically privacy policies, since this particular project I'm going to talk about revolves around privacy policies. Then I'll talk about some of the challenges that we're facing and our ideas for improving the status of things, and then our actual experiment that we've done. Now keep in mind, this is a very, very, very recent experiment, and so these are very preliminary results. We haven't published these yet, so y'all get a sneak peek of what's to come. Okay, everyone knows that what we do today always involves information exchange, whether you're talking about things in the financial industry, things in the healthcare industry, whether you're talking about government or retail, online, offline, there's always information exchange. And we also know from numerous surveys, both academic surveys and public opinion polls, that consumers are very concerned about the amount of information that's being collected about them. They're also very concerned about what happens to that information. There's been numerous surveys that show this. But at the same time, people still continue to give up their information in exchange for certain services and products. We still have a few people that are a little weary about online activities. And these people are very unsure about what happens to their information, and therefore they just steer clear of all that. So in order to make these customers, and others as well, comfortable with the way things are going, we need to make sure that we safeguard their privacy, and we also need to make sure that they understand that we're safeguarding their privacy. So how does privacy relate to trust? And this is from the panel that we had this morning. It's been proven in many different management areas that privacy is a proven driver of online trust. There's other drivers as well, but privacy is one of them. If a consumer thinks that a company or a website is going to protect their privacy, they'll be more inclined to trust that particular website, and therefore they'll be more inclined to transact with that particular website. So how do consumers learn about the privacy practices of websites and organizations? Right now, the easiest way is based on privacy policies. There's a lot of research going into privacy policies these days. There's a lot of research from the standpoint of having machine-readable privacy policies and different ways to do privacy policies. And we've done several studies that revolve around privacy policies. Now, I assume based on the audience that we have here, everyone's familiar with what these are. And basically, when you go to a website, there's the link there that says privacy policy, and you click on that, and it gives an overview of the privacy practices of that particular company. Some of our earlier research in the way of privacy policies compared what people think and what's important to people with regard to privacy with what is stated in privacy policies. And what we found out is that the things that companies put in their privacy policy is really of no interest to consumers. And this leads to several problems that we have nowadays, because although we have a lot of privacy policies on websites and at different companies that are supposed to portray the privacy management practices of those companies, even though those privacy policies are there, not that many people read them. So the project that I'm going to talk about today is going to hopefully determine ways that we can help people to read these policies. As it stands now, privacy policies are the only way that people have to learn about the privacy practices of a company. And we have several legislation, both federal legislation and state legislation, that mandates privacy policies being available on websites. Specifically, ones that I'm sure most of y'all have heard of deal with the financial industry, with the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, and in the healthcare industry with HIPAA. So in the financial industry and the healthcare industry, all of those companies are required to have privacy policies available. So we've focused a lot of our research in the areas of finance and healthcare for these reasons. So we have all these privacy policies out there, but can people read them? That's one of the big questions. So one of our studies has shown that most of these policies are not very readable. So if you look up here, you'll see a bunch of numbers. Under the healthcare industry, you'll see that we did some analysis and found out that in order to understand the majority of the privacy documents on healthcare websites, you needed to have at least 2 years of college education. We did this using the Fleisch readability scores, which is a common way to gauge readability of documents. We also found out that with the financial industry, in order to understand the privacy policies of those websites, a person needs to have at least 2 years of college. And this is not good when you look at the general internet population, because the general internet population, only 52% of the general population has that much education. And when you look at internet users, particularly the ones over age 25, they only have 2 years of college education. So there's a lot of people that are below the average, but then there's a lot of people above the average. But of course, those people below the average are the ones that are getting left out. If they even tried to read the privacy policies, they wouldn't be able to understand it. If they tried to understand it, it would be too time-consuming and too much of a burden. So therefore, what happens is the people don't read the privacy policies. And we found this out on numerous occasions. Although people will tell us in different types of surveys, they will tell us that they do read privacy policies, we know that they really don't. When we look at log files from different websites, we see that people don't read those. So in order to address this problem, our latest experiment has been an experiment online where we have tried to gauge the comprehension of different types of privacy policies